Dear friends, in our India, we had number of school of thoughts as far as philosophy is concerned. The philosophy is also called as darshan, and there are total 9 darshans or 9 schools of thought or philosophy, and broadly speaking they have been categorized into 2 categories, namely heterodox and orthodox, or in simple terms theist and atheist. Charvak is the oldest philosophy of India, and that has been categorized as atheist philosophy of India. In fact, there are other 2 schools of thought which have been also categorized as atheist school of thought or heterodox school of thought under the Indian philosophies. These Indian philosophies are also known or often called as Hindu philosophies. However, when the word Hindu is used in regard to the philosophy, it seems to have been used in a geographical sense, meaning thereby the land of India. Now, what is the philosophy? To put it very simply, without going into much depth, because philosophy is rather difficult subject as pursued by everybody, but let me try to put it in a simplest manner so that you can understand. Philosophy is nothing but the search of truth. Therefore, the search of truth or search of reality, that is a systematic study of knowing what is real or what is true knowledge or what is truth. There are all 9 schools which have found some ways and means to know the truth or the reality, and they have laid down certain ways, certain sources to know the truth, to know what is real. And in that process, the Charvak is the only such school which has accepted or which has recognized that the perception is the only source by which reality can be known, or it is only source of knowing valid knowledge or the reality. Therefore, Charvak says pratyakshameva pramanam, which simply means whatever we the people can perceive through our senses can only be the truth. Now, this formula is very simple formula to know the reality. Now, we have 5 senses by which we gain the knowledge. What are those sources? From our eyes we see, and by seeing we get the knowledge that particular thing appears like this or that. So eye is one of the senses. Similarly, by our ear we hear, and by hearing we come to know of different sounds. So hearing capacity or hearing sense is another such source. Then we have the smell. By our nose we can smell the different scents, odors, etc. So that is also one of the sense of knowing. Similarly, we have the tongue, by which we know what is the taste of sugar, what is the taste of salt, or what is the taste of any other such substance or food, or any other substance for that matter, including poisonous substance. And then we have the sense of touch. By touching different substance we can come to know whether it is hot, whether it is cold, or whether it is otherwise. So mainly speaking, there are these 5 senses with which we the human being get different knowledge around us. Charvak says that whatever can't be known by any of these senses, or in short, whatever cannot be perceived by using all these senses cannot be accepted to be truth. So with this formula, Charvak then further goes and says that we cannot prove the existence of soul with the use of any of these indriyas, therefore soul doesn't exist. That is what Charvak says, because nobody has seen the soul, nobody has heard, nobody has touched, nobody has smelled. So Charvak says similarly that the concept of God is also beyond the perception of human being, therefore even the God also doesn't exist. Similarly, the concepts like Punarjanma or the past life or the afterlife, these concepts are also beyond perception. No human being can perceive with the help of any of the sense. Therefore, he says that these concepts are also not reliable concepts, they are not proven concepts. Similarly, he says that we talk of concept like heaven or the hell, but then he says during the entire history of mankind, nobody could see the concept like a place like heaven or hell. Therefore, using this very formula, Charvak has rejected all these concepts: God, soul, heaven, hell. In short, he does not accept the guesswork or the circular argument or गोल की बातें. He demanded the proof, and he says until you get the proof, you have to reject to believe, you have to refuse to believe. In this regard, I would like to explain one shortest story which is attached to the Charvak, and that story is well dramatized by some Marathi author in his drama. I would like to shortly explain the story. There was a fight between Charvak and his wife. Like others in the society, the wife of Charvak strongly believed in the concept like God, heaven, hell, and Punarjanma, etc. Charvak said that even if the entire world believes, I will not accept that there is God or hell or heaven. Then wife said of that particular Charvak, how it is possible that you are going to try to prove something which nobody is able to accept, because everybody is believing, so you should also believe. Charvak says, okay, let us take it practical example and let us see whether you can also do that. One day in the earliest morning, that is fine morning, around 4 or 5, he takes his wife with him on the outskirts of the village, and he deliberately leaves some handprints like footprints, so that the people should be left to the guesswork as to which is the new animal which has come to the village. So after the sunrise, people see that there seems to be new animal which has entered into our village. So guesswork start. Many people say this must be lion, this must be so and so, this must be so and so, and ultimately they say that entire village debates, and ultimately somebody says that this must be the footprints of this particular animal, and then this news is spread to the entire village, and everybody believes that this animal has come to our village. Now interestingly, Charvak takes his wife to the villagers and he asks, what is the animal that has come to our village? So every villager tells him that this is the animal that has come. Then wife says it is not possible, because that cannot be animal. Charvak says everybody is saying that. When everybody is saying that, you should accept it. Wife says no, it is not truth. Simply because everybody is saying, I am not supposed to accept, because I have seen my own eyes that you put your handprints like footprints, therefore I cannot believe that this must be the animal. Then Charvak says, similar is the case with the concept of God. Simply because the entire world is believing into concept of God, I am not going to believe unless I could perceive, I could see with the help of my senses. So this is the philosophy of Charvak. In short, unless you see, don't believe. We have a saying in English also, to see is to believe, seeing is believing. So unless you perceive with the help of your senses, there is no believing, there is no acceptance. So this is what Charvak in short. Now Charvak, let me also explain. You must have been under the impression that Charvak means a particular person. In fact, Charvak is a name given to anybody who believed into Charvak philosophy. So basically, Charvak, the word Charvak has emerged from one word, that is Charvi, and in Sanskrit language Charvi means Buddhi. So one who uses his Buddhi is Charvik, and subsequently this Charvik became Charvak. So this is the concept of Charvak. So anyone who accepted the philosophy of Charvak, or it is also called Lokayat Shastra in our Indian philosophy. So anyone who believed into Lokayat Shastra, anyone who believed into this theory of Charvak, that unless you pursue something, don't accept it, so such person is named Charvak. So this is in short about the Charvak. Now let me explain some of the beautiful examples how Charvak tried to demand the proof by giving his argumentative sutra, that is formulas. He said, Charvak, because in those days, even today also in society we see the concept of Shraddh. People do the Shraddh, and it is believed that the departed souls and who are in the heaven would get pacified, would get satisfied if the Shraddh is performed at the earth by the descendants. Now with regard to this, Charvak says that this is only guesswork, and he demanded proof by questioning if the mantra is so powerful that it can send the food to the departed soul sitting into heaven, then it is useless for us to carry the tiffin when we are leaving the home, because when we are away from the home and when we feel hungry, it is not necessary to possess the tiffin or the burden of tiffin with us, because simply stated that very mantra should be performed at the home, so that we, despite being away from the home, should get satisfied or pacified. Our hunger should be satisfied. But Charvak says, does it happen? It doesn't happen. Then how do you believe in the concept of Shraddh? He says, even he gives another such example. If the mantra is so powerful that it can send the food to the departed soul sitting in the heaven, then why can't this very mantra can be used to send the food to the person who is on the rooftop of your own home? Let somebody go on the rooftop and you perform the mantra in your home, ground floor, and let us see whether his hunger, who is sitting on the roof, can be satisfied with the help of this mantra. It doesn't happen. So these are the things which could not be proven practically. So he says that these are nothing but these are the guessworks. These are believed because somebody has told, somewhere is written, and nobody could prove this thing in practical life, and that is what Charvak is. So now I will turn to the provisions of Indian Evidence Act. Indian Evidence Act is broadly said is divided, can be divided into two parts. It is all about what is to be proved, and then how it is to be proved. So what is to be proved means what is relevant, and whatever is relevant has to be proved in a specified way as laid down under the Act. So in short, what is to be proved and how it is to be proved. This is the only thing that entire evidence law is dealing with. So we will not deal with what is to be proved or what is to be relevant. We will simply go to the part whatever is relevant or whatever is to be proved, how it should be proved. So there the Indian Evidence Act has adopted the Charvak Sutra and it has been codified by way of section 60. Now let me tell what does the section 60 says. It says simply, oral evidence must be direct evidence. Oral evidence must in all the cases whatever be direct, that is to say. Now this gives example of Charvak, that is the concept of Charvak. If it refers to a fact which could be seen, then it must be the evidence of a witness who says he saw it. Now for example, to explain this concept, in the court a person is accused of having murdered. Then the only person who has seen actually can depose in the court that yes, he has seen. The other person who has not seen the murder taking place is not eyewitness, is not a direct witness. Therefore, his evidence is not at all trustworthy. Even court doesn't even take his evidence unless that he himself has seen when the accused was attacking the deceased and he was murdering. So a person who has actually seen must tell in the court that he has seen. This is the form of evidence. Similarly, if another example, if it refers to a fact which could be heard, then it must be the person, it must be the evidence of a witness who says he heard it. Now similarly, let us take an example that I have used some word of insulting somebody or defaming somebody. Then now this is the issue, whether I have really used word of insulting nature or defaming nature. Then this evidence is the evidence to be heard, evidence of a witness who says he perceived it by that sense or in that manner. Now this third clause refers to rest of the three senses. That is, first says about the seeing, second said about hearing, that is first says about the eyes, second says about the ear. Now what are the senses left? That is touch, smell and the taste. Now let us take an example. You have gone to a big hotel like Taj, where even a tea can cost you thousands of the rupees. You ordered the tea, you paid the bill, but the tea was not hot as required. You felt that this is a deficiency in the service. Okay. Now the question would be in this case, and you filed a case against the hotel management to get the compensation for the deficiency in the service. Now to prove that the tea was not hot as required and it was cold, or it was otherwise it was below the normal hotness, then only the person who has really tested it, who has really touched the hotness, can be the witness in the court whose evidence is acceptable to the court. Now other persons who have not touched, who have not even took the tea into hand, or they have not had the tea, they cannot give an account as to the hotness of the tea. So therefore here the smelling, the sense of touch becomes a sense of perception. So therefore here only the person who has perceived the hotness of the particular substance, in the example I am giving tea, shall be the only witness in the court whose evidence will be acceptable. Now similarly, let us take an example in respect of this very example of tea. Now normally tea has to be sweet. Wrongly or negligently, instead of tea, there was salt in the tea. Instead of sugar in the tea, the management or the person who prepared the tea pours the salt into the tea, and then that tea is given to you. You felt aggrieved because there is a deficiency in service. You demanded the tea, which must be naturally sweet, or it must be contain the sugar, but instead of that it contain the salt. Now here is the question whether tea is salty or whether tea is sweet. Who shall be the witness? Only the person who has tasted himself will be the person who will be the witness in the court to testify that tea was not sweet but it was salt or salty. So this is the further sense of the perception, where Evidence Act requires that only the person who has pursued that fact in that manner must be the evidence. Now in this fashion, the Indian Evidence Act has first rule of this direct evidence. In our legal term, the person who has not heard, who has not seen, who has not otherwise pursued with any other such senses is called as a hearsay evidence, is called as secondary evidence. And in Indian Evidence Act, the concept of secondary evidence is not at all applicable as far as the oral evidence is concerned. It is only in respect of secondary, the documentary evidence, that secondary evidence is permissible, that too under circumstances which are explained, and only upon the satisfaction of the court that there is no possibility of bringing the truth before the court by way of following the rigid rule of first rule of evidence, then court may permit you to lead the secondary evidence. So these are the regulated circumstances where the secondary evidence in respect of documentary proof is allowed. Now why these rules are necessary? Because in the court a party comes and makes a claim, whether it is a civil case or criminal case. Normally in the criminal case, it is the police who makes a claim that accused committed a crime. Similarly in civil case, it is a plaintiff, the person who files a case in the court, makes a claim, that his claim may be in respect of property, defamation, many other things, tort, annoyance, damages, so and so. So law requires that this claim has to be established as true. So what is the source of knowing truth? How the truth has to be brought? So these are the sources. These are the valid sources of knowing the truth. And it is the duty of court that it shall be going after only truth and only truth, because the truth alone shall be the guiding star in the process of justice. It is for that reason we may have our forefathers must have adopted the concept of Satyameva Jayate, that truth alone shall triumph, truth alone shall win. So as Charvak has said that perception is the only source of knowing truth, Indian Evidence Act has also accepted these are the valid sources of knowing truth. Now how it is possible with regard to the documentary evidence? For that I will not go into much depth. I will simply explain. Section 61 and section 91 pertain to documentary evidence in respect of the claim made in the court through any case. Law requires that when you say that this particular document states so and so thing, how it is to be proved? Then in that case you must produce that very document in the court which contains what you state. You cannot be allowed to say that I cannot produce the document in the court, but then your word should be accepted by the court, that the document says so and so, so and so. So when you want to prove the contents of the document, you need to produce the very document in the court. Your mere words cannot be believed upon, because that is the only direct evidence. That is the only proof acceptable to the court. Similarly, another case of contract or any other document pertaining to transfer of property which has been reduced to the writing, or say any mode of transfer like lease, sale deed, exchange, etc., or agreement for sale, etc. When a dispute arises between the parties to such transfer document, transfer deed, then what are the conditions, what are the terms which have been reduced to writing as the terms of the contract of the transfer? Then law requires that the very document must be proven in the court, and by producing the document you must prove that these are the actual terms and conditions in the court. So this is also nothing but the insistence of the direct evidence, because in the absence of very deed, very document of agreement, parties cannot be allowed to prove anything in regard to that, or court cannot believe upon the words in the absence of the document itself. So these all provisions taken together make out the case that primarily in the search of truth, it is only the direct evidence, it is only the primary evidence that is depending or through the perception, the senses, is the only requirement of law. Of course, there are some exceptional circumstances with regard to the documentary evidence, when you can prove that original document was destroyed, or despite your best efforts and vigilance you could not obtain, but luckily you had with you a photocopy thereof or a copy thereof, or original document is in possession of the other party, and despite your notice the other party is not bringing that document to the court. These are the circumstances where you can take the permission of the court to rely upon the secondary source, that is copy. However, this must be proved that this is the actual copy of the original document. So these are all things, dear friends, which I feel have roots into Indian philosophy, that is Charvak philosophy. And in fact Charvak philosophy is very interesting, and even today's science also is purely based upon the philosophy of Charvak, because science doesn't claim anything unless it proves, and whatever is proven by the science can be seen or can be pursued by each and every person upon this earth. So the Charvak is the scientific method of knowing the truth, and as I told in the beginning, that philosophy is nothing but the search of the truth. I feel that even the science, which always goes into the search, is the purest philosophy, and those who have the scientific temperament and scientific temper, scientific views, are those who are always in the search of truth. And our society needs such kind of people, such kind of attitude, and it is a fundamental duty as per our Constitution of India also, under Article 51A, sub-article H, that it shall be the fundamental duty of every citizen to have spirit of inquiry and scientific temper. As I have told, Indian Evidence Act also mandates that only the direct rule of evidence will be the acceptable form of proof in the court to prove something which is claimed. So dear friends, with all these today's concepts, I would like to stop today's lecture, and if this is found interesting by you, particularly with regard to the concept of Charvak philosophy, you can let me know by way of your comments, so that I would like to conduct a full session on the Charvak philosophy itself, which is a very interesting one. And in fact today I shortly refer to only few of the things said by Charvak. There are such number of things which Charvak has said, and there are many other things which our legal provisions have roots in Charvak philosophy. So since my topic was today Charvak in the Indian evidence law, I would like to conclude here. Thank you for joining today's session.